Tantor Audio, a division of recorded books, presents The Way of Fire and Ice, The Living Tradition of Norse Paganism, by Ryan Smith. Narrated by Roger Clark. Publisher's note: this audiobook includes bonus material. Please visit tantor.com and type The Way of Fire and Ice into the search box. Follow the link to the book's page, then, under the Supplemental Content section, please enter the access code NORSE, and then click the Unlock button to access the bonus material. The code should be entered in all lowercase letters. All figures, images, examples, and tables referenced in this audiobook can be found in the bonus material. Chapter 1. What is the way of fire and ice? How fare the gods? How fare the elves? All Jotunheimr groans. The gods are at council. Loud roar the dwarfs by the doors of stone, the masters of the rocks. Would you know yet more? Voluspo, 48. Amidst the bustling urban night, a heaving mosh pit pulses to a howling song of mighty gods, doing battle at the world's end. Mystics speak a heartfelt prayer in their native tongue, raising a horn for ancient powers beneath the boughs of a tropical rainforest. A world away, black-clad volunteers give their hammer pendants a quick kiss before locking arms with others across a freeway, demanding justice for the wrongly slain. Alone in their home, a devotee opens a cupboard, lighting candles for a deity of mystery while whispering words and thanks. On the side of a snowy mountain, a group of wanderers rest a moment, feeling the presence of nature's majesty. A wounded warrior, with runes and dragons inked into their flesh, feels the comfort provided by their path as they do the difficult work with their fellows of healing unseen injuries. All feel the tread of mighty beings. Ever since the end of the Second World War, a remarkable new spiritual movement has come into the world. After over 1,000 years where two of Abraham's 3 children, Christianity and Islam, have dominated religion and spirituality, the ideas that were pushed off the map have returned. Witches, druids, seers, magicians, spirit workers, and storytellers carrying ancient wisdom are surfacing across the globe. Many of these practitioners call themselves pagans, drawing inspiration from the tales, gods, and ways of the peoples of Europe, the Mediterranean, and the Middle East, who lived before the rise of Christianity and Islam. Countless people wander down these old paths, seeking answers to life's many questions. For many, the source answering the call are the Norse gods. The ways people reach them are as numerous as there are seekers. Many first encounter them through popular culture, whether through Marvel's Thor, television shows like The Vikings or The Last Kingdom, comic books or best-selling novels like Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology and American Gods. Others find them when researching personal heritage. Some feel your way through the frenzy of mosh pits and hear them in music inspired by the ancients, such as metal bands like Tyr and Amon Amarth. Many arrive through direct experiences they can't explain any other way than spiritual. This may seem strange at first blush. In these times it is no surprise people are seeking and finding answers on paths most have forgotten. Much in this world has been thrown greatly out of balance. For anyone seeking guidance and strength in the face of challenges, the ways of the ancient Norse and their gods offers a clear, heroic example. Those who are drawn to these gods and the ways of ancient Norse societies are found all over the world. Norse pagans are found everywhere in Scandinavia, where these ways first returned, and across Europe. Adherents hold rituals all over the United States and Canada, celebrating in parks and homes alike. In Mexico, Brazil, and Latin America, practitioners honor the ways of Norse practice in their daily lives and communities. From New Zealand and Australia to West Africa, people are finding Norse-inspired practice speaks to them and their concerns like nothing else. Many may wonder why there are people turning to these ways in the modern day. It may seem strange at first blush for anyone in the present to be seeking guidance and inspiration from a time as far removed from the present as we are from the surface of the moon. To the uninformed observer, what pagans do is little more than escapism, fantasy disguised as religion to avoid the problems in our daily lives. Nothing could be further from the truth. Even so, most Norse pagans go to the same schools, work very normal jobs, shop in the same stores, and deal with the same news and worries everyone else does. There are many ideas and values in Norse paganism that provide a compelling answer for the problems that come with modern life. The Norse ways offer guidance for addressing these challenges that is meaningful and satisfying. Norse pagans turn to ancient gods and ancient ways because their example is as valid today as it was 1,000 years ago. The source. All forms of modern Norse paganism draw inspiration from the pre-Christian societies of Scandinavia. Some also include sources from Anglo-Saxon England and the pre-Christian Germanic tribes of continental Europe. The most commonly used sources are the sagas of Scandinavia. The most important of these are the Poetic Eddas, a collection of sagas that deal with the Norse gods, and the Prose Edda, a single work written by Icelandic monk and antiquarian Snorri Sturluson in the early 13th century to preserve the necessary knowledge of Icelandic lore and ideas for ensuring the art of Icelandic poetry would survive. Some other commonly used written sources are the Icelandic sagas, the Old English epic Beowulf, the saga of the Jomsvikings, and other surviving historical sagas. Norse pagans also turned to surviving relics, runestones, folklore, and Scandinavian oral traditions. These materials were produced by a group of peoples who lived in a very different time and life from the present day. The Norse peoples of Scandinavia were a collection of many different societies, ranging from small clans to vast kingdoms, who lived over 1,000 years ago in very harsh lands, whose survival depended on working effectively with their environment. Most settled disputes made laws and governed their affairs through democratic assemblies known as tings that also had the power to crown and depose kings. Unlike other societies in nearby Christian Europe, women enjoyed nearly equal status to men, with the right to inherit property and divorce their husbands. Some fought on the battlefield as shield maidens. The Norse were master mariners, skilled traders, gifted artists, and fierce warriors. The Norse are most well known for a time known as the Viking Age, beginning in 793 CE with the raid on the Lindisfarne monastery in northern England, and ending in 1066 CE with the Battle of Stamford Bridge. This era was an age of war, pressed from the south by expanding Christian powers and led by emperors like Charlemagne. The Norse peoples struck back against encroaching empires by raiding most of Christendom and conquering large swathes of modern England and northern France. Some chased the horizon as far as Baghdad in the Middle East and North America, trading with the people they met along the way. Despite their celebrated ferocity, the Norse were eventually converted to Christianity by force through armed invasions, opportunistic Vikings who used the new faith as a tool to dominate other Norse peoples, and power-hungry kings who used the cross to cement their rule. During this upheaval, these ancient Scandinavians produced the sagas, relics, and runestones that guide modern Norse pagans. At the heart of their knowledge were three core ideas: the world tree, fate, and the powers. The world tree is a great cosmic tree that holds up all the realms of reality, including physical reality, which is known as Midgard. Fate is a great force that influences everything in existence, even the mightiest of the powers, shaping everything while also being shaped by all things. The powers are the Norse gods, including famous beings like Odin and Thor. The living spirits they honored: elves, dwarves, trolls, spirits of the natural world, and the dead. More information on the world tree, fate, and the spirits, both living and dead, and working with them is in Chapter 2. Information on the gods working with them and what they represent is in Chapter 3. There is no question that the present day is totally different from when these gods were widely worshipped. The values that came with them were accepted as the norm, but conditions have changed dramatically in the centuries since Christianity became the dominant religion of Europe and much of the world. Yet for those who see wisdom in Norse pagan practice, these changes are what make the ideas, values, and worldview of these peoples a powerful source of inspiration in the present day. Each tradition of Norse paganism uses and interprets these sources in different ways. What is in this book, Radical Norse Paganism, or The Way of Fire and Ice, is one way of living with the powers and applying the example of the Norse peoples in the present day. It came into existence through the experiments, trial and error, mistakes, and ideas of a group of Norse pagans from California, looking for a better way to live Norse spirituality. The Way of Fire and Ice. What is in this book, The Way of Fire and Ice, which is also known as Radical Norse Paganism, Fire and Ice Paganism, and the radical tradition that set it apart from all other forms of Norse paganism? First, this is a living tradition. Meaningful spirituality grows, develops, and changes as necessary to fulfill the needs of practitioners. Second, the past is a source for inspired adaptation. Such adaptations must provide concrete guidance for tackling the challenges of daily life in a meaningful, just, and effective fashion. Third, these practices must serve the needs of people in their daily lives and not be a tool for wielding power over others. Fourth, Radical Norse paganism is open to all who feel it speaks to them and treat all people with dignity and respect. Fifth and finally, this way calls on all to actively participate in modern life through our spiritual, physical, and social communities. Just as Radical Norse paganism is a living tradition, it is also always a part of your life, in and out of sacred space. A living tradition. Living tradition is this way's beating heart. It is a spiritual practice that grows and changes as times and needs require it to. We are always developing and are never chained to the dictates of holy books or anointed leaders. The ancient law that inspires us leaves no doubt reality is not fixed and unmoving. The world as we know it has not always been and will not always exist as it currently does. In the sagas, the only guarantees are life, death, and change. If you accept these are the only things certain in this existence, it makes no sense to freeze practice in a place of unmoving perfection. This is why the way you live spiritually must be engaging, just, and fulfilling for all who share it. Values are a compass steering you toward the right path, not a map dictating what that path is and must always be. Inspired adaptation. The source for ideas is the surviving information on pre-Christian Norse practices. Fire and ice paganism revives their ideas, spirituality, and practices in ways that are meaningful for modern life. The past is the spark for igniting effective practice. It is more important to adapt the past into practices that meet people's needs than to put theory or academic perfection first. This is different from many other forms of Norse paganism in the world today. Most other traditions place heavy emphasis on what is commonly referred to as reconstructionism. Reconstructionism seeks to rebuild what once existed as completely as possible for the practice's framework. In Reconstructionism, it is necessary to fully understand the mentality of these peoples as they once were before their ideas can be applied to the present. This sometimes means the details of the past are focused on, at the expense of what matters today, or how people practice in the present. Though Reconstructionism can be useful as a starting point, it cannot be the end-all, be-all of spirituality. One thing fire and ice paganism shares with Reconstructionism is the idea that revived practice should be informed and understand our source of inspiration in its historic context. You cannot pluck one element out of another time or culture with no regard for its broader significance or meaning, and expect to put it to good use. That said, the place the way of fire and ice diverges from Reconstructionists is what you do next. This tradition uses the past as inspiration for developing practices that meet the needs of the present. It is not the final word. Possessing in-depth historical knowledge is not required or necessary for meaningful practice. Modern relevance. Inspired adaptation fuels modern relevance. The values, philosophy, and broader world view of the ancients offers guidance for dilemmas people face in the present, providing understanding of how you should act today. If inspired adaptation answers what to do with the source material, then modern relevance challenges you with the question, how would the powers expect me to handle this now? In the radical tradition, you act in a right fashion because the values the powers represent are worthy and build better lives. The gods, spirits, and dead give us examples of right and wrong through the stories of their actions. No one lives constantly seeking their approval or in fear of their condemnation. If you are truly living a worthy life, they will be pleased whether or not your actions are different from how people in a very different time would have handled a similar problem. What matters is how you live and the consequences of your actions, not adherence to precise steps or rigid lists. Modern relevance argues that spiritual practice must always serve the genuine needs of people. This also urges us to challenge anyone using Norse-inspired spirituality as a tool for wielding power over others. Whether you look to history or the news, There is no question needless suffering and hardship has been caused by powerful people invoking holiness or established institutions to justify horrible actions. Everyone must learn from these examples and not do what is clearly harmful to life. Anyone with knowledge of the powers must guide others and never rule or dictate righteousness. Inclusive practice. Anyone can live the way of fire and ice, regardless of heritage, race, ethnicity, physical or mental ability, sexuality, or gender. The Norse gods speak to people across the globe. Some of the most famous of the gods, such as Odin and Thor, have parents who were from very different divine clans. Just as the gods themselves are of many backgrounds, all spirits of nature are worthy of reverence, and every ancestor of every person, be they of blood culture or shared purpose, is worthy of honor. Fire and ice paganism welcomes all. The foundation for this belief, discussed further in Chapter 5, holds that the measure of a person is in their deeds. This means the inherent traits of race, gender, sexuality, national origin, physical or mental ability are not and never should be used for assessing anyone's worth. Anyone who respects others and treats people with the dignity all deserve is welcome. Those who reject this core truth by calling for or actively excluding, denying, or directly harming anyone based on inherent facts of their existence are opposed to everything that is the way of fire and ice. Active involvement. Based on these core concepts, you should always be as active in the world as you can. Radical Norse paganism doesn't start and stop with ritual or at the edge of sacred spaces. It is lived every day in the values you live, uphold, and honor with deeds. This means engaging in worthy deeds that make your life, communities, and the world a better place. You should always be pushing to do better, make better, and build better for all, while never resting on the laurels of past successes. Engaging with the world may mean doing volunteer work or community service. It may also mean participating in direct action for just causes. It could also mean getting involved in civic affairs, locally, regionally, or globally. You might also choose to focus on talking about ideas inspired by your practice, like human dignity and fairness, on the job, in the classroom, on YouTube, or with your family and friends. Regardless of how you put the ethics of Norse paganism into practice, there is no question this way calls all of us to be involved in the world we are all a part of. This form of spirituality is not for escaping or hiding from the troubles of the world. Honoring these powers means actively living in the here and now. The other Norse traditions. There are many other forms of Norse paganism in the world today. Fire and ice paganism is one of the many different takes on Norse paganism. These traditions are not all there is to Norse paganism. There are many more people who follow Norse paganism who weave Norse practices into other forms of paganism, or a more uniquely personal approach to spirituality. One thing you need to understand about Norse paganism is the word heathenry. Heathenry is the most commonly used term of identification by Norse pagans, with many, though not all, using heathen and Norse pagan interchangeably. However, in Scandinavia and Germany, the term heathen is used the same way as pagan is in the rest of the world. There are also those who identify as either Norse pagan or heathen, while arguing these words are not interchangeable, but are distinctly different things. Always make sure to ask which term is preferred before making assumptions. Asatru, Vanatru, and Rokatru. The most well-known group of Norse traditions is made up of the three subgroups known as Asatru, Vanatru, and Rokatru. These siblings share a common origin in the 1960s and 1970s. Each is based on worshipping one of the three tribes of Norse gods. Asatru, the oldest of the three, mostly worship the Aesir. The Aesir are gods associated with human society and include some of the most well-known Norse gods, such as Odin, Thor, and Loki. The term was first used in Iceland and was adopted across the world, becoming more Aesir-centric as time passed. One of the most influential authors for English-speaking Asatru is Diana Paxson. Vanatru and Rokatru are newer traditions that branched off from Asatru. They share common practices with Asatru, but have a different emphasis. Vanatru focuses on the Vanir, the gods associated with the interactions between humanity and nature. Vanatru developed in response to the Aesir-centric practices of Asatru by people who felt the Vanir were not honored enough and were more called to that tribe. The gods of the Vanir include Freyr and Freya. Rokatru, also called Thursatru, is the newest of the three and is founded on reverence for the Jotnar, the gods who are also called giants that are associated with the powers of nature in its fullest. Some Rokatru practitioners are influenced by left-hand path spirituality and borrow ideas from them. Reconstructionist heathenry and theodism. Some see heathenry as a different thing from Norse paganism. According to these heathens, the essence of the difference is they, unlike Norse pagans, are reconstructionist polytheists. Their goal is building heathen spirituality by reconstructing it as best as possible in the modern world, through studying the folklore, written sources, archaeology, and other research on pre-Christian Germanic peoples. Reconstructionist heathens often define their spirituality as Germanic in origin instead of just being exclusively Norse. For Reconstructionist heathens, there is a major emphasis on scholarship and direct reconstruction over revived adaptation. Theodism is a unique form of heathenry that takes Reconstructionism to greater lengths. Theodism was founded by Garman Lord and argues for total reconstruction, as much as possible, of the spirituality of pre-Christian Anglo-Saxons and their social systems. They say the best way to practice their form of spirituality is in something as close as possible to the historical social environment. Theodism is very hierarchical and believes the leaders of their groups, known as theods, are the intermediaries between members and the divine. Theodists require aspiring members to join the community as thralls, who are effectively initiates or apprentices. In Theodism, being part of an active community is essential to practice. It is not possible to be theodish without being a part of a theod. Folklore-inspired practices. Another common form of Norse paganism is forn-sed, also known as forn-sire. Forn-sed means the old way, and is mostly found in Scandinavia and Northern Europe. For forn-sed practitioners, the main source is folklore and oral traditions. Preserving these customs, practices, and beliefs is more important than reconstructing the past. However, much like Reconstructionist heathenry, there is a strong emphasis on tradition over adaptation. There is also a much stronger focus on reverence for the spirits of nature and place instead of the gods. Urglava, first organized by Robert Shriver, is another tradition that comes from North America. It draws some inspiration from the rest of Norse paganism, but its primary focus is the folk practices of the Pennsylvania Deutsch, commonly called the Pennsylvania Dutch. The Pennsylvania Deutsch are a group of people who first emigrated to Pennsylvania, located in the northeastern United States, from Western Germany and Switzerland.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?